So hey folks, you may have seen the video I produced about 3 months ago that kind of outlined what I felt to be a deceptive commercial by Chevrolet, outlining the advantages of high-strength steel bed versus the Ford F-150 aluminum bed. And, I was trying to find Ford or Ram producing deceptive commercials like that about any of their newer trucks, and I really couldn't. This was just above and beyond what I consider to be a deceptive advertising. And I'll tell you why. Because you can watch that first video and come away from it thinking that everything was definitive, that what you saw really happened. And I pointed out that the toolbox clearly in the image punctured the Chevrolet bed. Well, I want to go a step further because there's another video that was produced to kind of demonstrate the engineering and the methodology that Chevrolet put into this particular ad. I'm going to point out a few things here. So when you play this particular video, one of the first things that they show you is what they consider surface damage. So to them, surface damage is scratch or dents that don't affect the utility of the bed. Right? Of course they're going to say that because predominantly if you drop extremely heavy weight from 5 feet or an incredibly sharp, heavy object onto a high-strength steel bed, it's less likely to tear. So when you see the picture of their bed here in a second, you can see that first of all they used a silver bed, which is kind of interesting because this is steel. So silver with dents doesn't show quite as much as it would with if it was in a darker bed. So for instance, let's say that this was a blue truck or if it was a black truck. You would see how the scratches go straight through to the metal. And then of course that metal would begin to rust. So let's go to what they consider more excessive damage. So puncture damage to them are ruptures, fractures, or other holes that could affect the utility of the bed. Now this is also interesting to me because what you're going to see here is a picture of the Ford bed. Now the angle, of course, that they aim at, you see all the light hitting these little scratches, which of course are scratches in aluminum and would never rust in the first place. Secondly, you see some of these tears. And you do see a few tears. However, how is that actually affecting the utility of the bed? Are you no longer able to load, 4x8 sheets of plywood? Can you no longer load concrete in the bed? What can't you do because you have a couple tears except maybe load, a truck full of play sand for, a sandbox in your backyard? Continuing on, what I want to show you is the methodology behind this specific test. Now I'm going to fast forward up to the toolbox demonstration. So the toolbox demonstration is one that people are generally viewing as cut and dry, right? They drop a toolbox and it punctures the bed of the Ford, but it doesn't puncture the bed of the Silverado. So let's get started here and let's read the details about the toolboxes. A handheld toolbox was pushed diagonally off the side rail of each truck. The first toolbox was a McMaster car tool with tools for a total weight of 32 pounds. The remaining shots were using an empty snap-on toolbox weighing 28 pounds. So I started doing a little bit of research on snap-on toolboxes weighing 28 pounds. And what I found was kind of interesting, and I'm going to show you that now. So upon looking and really trying to find where they got this toolbox from, I found that this specific toolbox that they used is actually a vintage toolbox from Snap-on that's not even produced anymore. In the description even indicates this is a very sturdy, heavy-duty made toolbox, and this was a toolbox that was actually considered one of the heaviest handheld toolboxes of its time. So essentially they had to look specifically for a toolbox that's not even made anymore to find the heaviest metal toolbox they could use to demonstrate that type of weight hitting, both steel and aluminum. Again, I still think that adds to more of the deceptiveness of their particular ad. Now back to the commercial. What I want to show you is what actually happens the first time they drop the toolbox onto the Ford bed using a 32-pound steel toolbox with tools in it. So that mark right there is all that was left when they dropped a 32-pound loaded toolbox into the bed of this truck. And as you can see, it's a relatively compact toolbox. So they took a toolbox that was lightweight, stuffed it with tools in order for it to produce that little bit of damage in the bed of this truck. Now the next test that you're going to see is them using a snap-on toolbox in one of the other trucks.
You turn around, you go. Oh.
So again, it left some damage. This is a discontinued toolbox. It's vintage. It's the heaviest toolbox of its type that Chevrolet had to demonstrate hitting the bed of this truck. Now what I'm showing you here, I'm actually on Home Depot's website, is comparable modern toolboxes that you would generally find in the bed of most people's trucks. You don't see a lot of steel toolboxes around, and if you do, they're generally pretty antiquated. You don't really see people using them anymore. They're not as functional and they don't hold up as well because they rust. Kind of like the bed of some trucks. Anyways, as you can see, this is a rigid 22-inch toolbox. This is roughly the same size as the Snap-on toolbox that you see drop. It's actually a little larger. 10.6 pounds on this particular toolbox. Plus, it's plastic. If it fell on the bed of your truck, it would be very unlikely to do any damage to your truck at all. So let's go back and let's look at a couple other toolboxes. So this DeWalt toolbox, this is an extra large toolbox. This specific toolbox, it being plastic, isn't going to have those steel sharp edges to puncture anything, as well as the fact that most people buy these trucks and they put some type of bed liner, considering there's 50 different types of bed liners, even a simple rubber rug that you can put in the bed of your truck to protect it. So now that we're back to the original commercial, I want to actually show you the same test that they did after they already dropped it in the Ford and they showed that it punctured the bed. But now I'm going to show you what happens in the Chevy commercial.
Well, let's find out. Same spot, same angle, same empty toolbox.
So, notice this spot right here. On my last video I did, I was filming the screen of an iPad, so you really couldn't see it that well. But let's focus in on this for a second. So as you can see from this shot, you can clearly see that it punctured the bed of this truck. A lot of people like to make the claim that that's not a puncture hole, it's a shadow, but look at all the other dents around here. Do any of them cast that type of shadow? That's clearly an indentation from a puncture. I'm going to rewind the video slightly so you can actually see it again. Clearly, when it impacted, you could see that it stopped the toolbox and bounced it back. That's an indication that this corner dug into the bed and it actually pushed it backwards because of that. Now let's finish it off by actually hearing the commentary after this actually happens. And notice how everyone's kind of staring at the hole in the bed right now.
You took it way better. The steel held up. I wouldn't even call that a dent.
Okay, so what I want to do again is rewind it slightly. Notice this next time that he pushes it off, how lightly it's pushed off the side of the bed. That is definitely not the same force as the first time. Look at the first time.
Toolbox.
So the point that I'm trying to make here is not that I'm faulting Chevrolet for making a commercial like this, because it's deceiving just like a lot of other commercials. But what I'm trying to say is that you can't trust what you see in a lot of these commercials. Yes, we all know high-strength steel is more puncture-resistant than aluminum. We know that. We get that. There's no argument there. What we're basically saying is, A, most people are going to put some type of bed protection in the bed of their truck, especially if it's aluminum, right? That's even more reason to. B, this particular commercial utilized one of the heaviest handheld toolboxes you could use, mainly for scale, so you could say, oh, well, that's a small toolbox. It obviously can't weigh much. That toolbox weighs 28 pounds. It's not even produced anymore. It's vintage, which means Chevrolet had to go out of their way to find this specific toolbox. Most people are going to be using plastic or some type of other composite toolbox material, not necessarily steel anymore when they're trying to load their tools up. So the likelihood of this ever happening is very slim, just like the likelihood of people dropping paver blocks from 5 feet in the air in the bed of their truck. Now, Ford's not immune to making deceptive commercials, and this is kind of a deceptive commercial that they made a while back, and they were competing against Toyota, Chevy, and Dodge. Now, in this particular commercial, they were going over I guess what you could call a washboard road, but I've never seen a washboard road like this, especially driving at these speeds. Otherwise, again, you're just abusing your truck. If any of you all do this, I wouldn't know why, especially in a new truck. But take a look at what they, I guess, expected people to do with their trucks. I mean, if you drive over a road that's that rough, so your truck is bouncing around like that intentionally, you're going to blow out your shocks and you're going to do all sorts of other types of damage to your vehicle. So I just wanted to make that point because, right now, the most deceptive commercial I see is the GM or the Chevrolet commercial with the whole box test. In the past, Ford's made commercials that are, equally as deceptive, just, because you're not really going to ever do that to your truck. And it's all about marketing, and that's the point of this at the end of the day. People are going to say it's all commercials, you don't believe any of them. Well, that's kind of what you have to do. You can't really believe it because it's all marketing at the end of the day. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. If you do, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel and like it. Thank you.